Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the IETF New Participant Programme. Thank you all for coming along. I'm going to start off. I'll introduce myself in a minute, but just so that we orient and make sure that you are all in the right place. This is the first session of today's New Participant Programme. This is the introduction to the IETF, and we'll be talking about the IETF, about participants, about the structure of the IETF, funding, governance, and policies. And this is one of 6 presentations throughout the day. And then we follow up with a wrap-up session. Each of these presentations is given by somebody different who will introduce themselves, and there will be time for questions and discussion within each of the sessions as well. So, my name is Jay Daly. I am the IETF Executive Director, and I've been in this role for just over 5 years now. I've been in the internet for a long time, originally in networking and then in domain names. And you'll see when we discuss things later, we're a slightly unusual organisation in that while I am the most senior paid employee, I am not responsible for much of the things that you will be doing here, the work, the technology, the development of standards, because that is intentionally community-led. So the IETF is a complex organisation. It's broad in scope. It covers a variety of different activities. There are some detailed practices and detailed rules about how the IETF operates, and we know this can be a high barrier of entry for new participants. And so we provide this whole day programme to, first of all, teach you all the important things about the IETF, to you to become productive and effective participants, and also to reduce the chances of you giving up and running away in horror. We also aim to build a cohort of new participants so that you get to meet the other people who are here who are starting in the IETF at the same time, because you'll be working with them if things go well for many years. And we also aim to give you a head start in meeting people. So we will introduce you to some of the people who have been here for a long time. Throughout the week, we'll be doing that, so that you can begin to meet some of these people directly and learn about some of the hot topics. So that's our plan for this. So before we get into the substance of this, we're just going to do a couple of short slides about MetaCo. So this is, you've been sent details about this beforehand, and I think many of you will have used it or have tested it. But we need to make sure that everybody is fully aware of this. This is the IETF custom tool for participation. Sorry, that should say participation, not remote participation. It is what everybody needs to use in order to participate in the IETF, because we aim to run a meeting that is fully hybrid for people on site and people remote. And so we ask everybody on site to use MetaCo to join the meeting queue and various other things to ensure that that we are working aligned with those people from working remotely. And so at each session there is a QR code here, which we ask people to scan and then on their phones log into MetaCo, and you will have a simple web-based client on your phone that doesn't do audio and video, but lets you join in the chat and lets you put your hand up to speak and things. So, and this is just a quick explanation of the features that are available in MetaCo. If you haven't looked at it yet, then very good idea to start looking at it now. So down the bottom, as you can see, we have the chat. We have a polling tool we call the show of hands tool. We have a map of the event. We have a link through to the shared notes because most sessions have shared notes that people write. We have the transcription and we have the list of participants. The transcription is a combination of human in some rooms and AI in other rooms, and of variable quality as a result, but getting better all of the time. So that's Metaco. So now on to talk about the IETF then. The IETF is a standards development organisation at its heart, focused on internet technologies. So it is where people come to develop technology and agree technologies. The basic premise for many people to come is that if you have a global standard, then everybody can use it. If you don't have global standards, then you can't communicate with other people, or you can only communicate in a limited space. And so that's why people come. It has no formal membership. Anyone can participate. You participate simply by participating. No permission is needed. People participate as individuals, not representatives of their employer. Now, what that means is that somebody who comes as an individual has just as much say as somebody who comes from one of the world's largest companies. The companies cannot buy influence and cannot have more of a say because they have more of a financial investment, either in the internet or in the IETF. It is driven by market-based adoption. A real standard is one that people use. Many people regard it as a failure if the IETF produces a standard that nobody then implements because the work has then not been useful. It is bottom-up community controlled. So this is very important. We will see this throughout this. Everything you see about the structure of the IETF, the processes, the rules, has been built by you in the community and put together. And all of the work that I and the other people who work here do is to implement those processes that have been developed by the community volunteers. So it's completely controlled by the community. Most decisions are made by rough consensus, not voting. Now that will be explained later on in one of the later sessions. There is no formal role for governments. Now, this is in the same way there is no formal role for any organisation. Governments do send people who come, and so we have plenty of government people, just as we have plenty of people from other sectors, which I will show you in a moment. But they come in the same way as everybody else comes, no special authority. And you may notice we have no sales going on. We don't ban marketing people, we just make it too complicated for them, okay? That's the way. Right, so this is the mission of the IETF. It is not perhaps going to make anybody jump up and clap, but it does certainly encapsulate the IETF quite well. So it's to make the internet work better by producing high quality, relevant technical documents that influence the way people design, use and manage the internet. And those three parts are important to remember: design, use and manage, because quite often participants only work in one of those areas and are sometimes not aware of the other areas of it as well. So the IETF was first formed in 1986 as an engineering activity. The first meeting was attended by 21 US federal government funded researchers, and some of them are still here. So you'll get to meet them, and they've been to almost every meeting since. The internet standards process that is followed was first formally documented in 1992 and has been revised since. And it initially met 4 times a year, now 3, and it's always been open to the public. The IETF is the home of the RFC series, but the RFC series predates the IETF. RFC 1 was published in 1969 by Steve Crocker of UCLA to organize the working notes of the ARPANET research program. And so many of you will know that some of the early RFCs, like some in the 800 series, deal with email. and other things. So it's a long-standing series, and it's now approaching 10,000. So we're expecting RFC 10,000 sometime next year, I believe. And so online data access, FTP, was defined in one of the early RFCs. And so the RFC series itself became the first online publication series because you could get it over FTP many years ago. And so for 28 years, it was managed and edited by the internet pioneer John Postel, and it has matured significantly since, but you will see many of the origins of it still have some impact today. So I'm now going to give you some idea about the other people that you'll be working with. This is useful because this is a big organization and needs a degree of contextualization. So we have approximately 53,000 email addresses subscribed to our mailing lists. We have about 7,000 active participants per year. Now, we measure that as the number of different email addresses that are used to send messages to our mailing lists, the number of individual different people that come to our meetings, and the number of people who are listed as authors of our documents. And so we take the union of those three sets, and that's how we end up with this number. So as you can see, we ask people, the first chart here, to tell us in this survey, which we do once a year, what kind of participant are you? Are you a regular participant, as in that you read and post to email lists regularly? And we have approximately 12% of people are in that category. Then we ask people, are you an occasional one, which means that they do post, but not that often, and we are at, say, 24%. Then we have people who read email lists, but do not post to them, and these are quite often people who are just reading one or two lists for specific reasons, and we have another 23% there. Then we know we have a group of people who monitor email lists for specific things, such as a specific piece of technology being developed, a specific change or something, and they're using some form of automated system or other things, and we have almost 30% of people that. And then still we have plenty of previous participants who still say subscribe to the email list. And then we have 6% of new participants. So you're in that group of new participants, approximately 6% of the 7,000 active participants. Then we have the breakdown by region. And as you can see, Europe and North America dominate. Now, the IETF rather unusually defines North America as USA and Canada. That's a historical thing. And and Mexico is in Latin America rather than North America. But that is a pretty static breakdown of our breakdown by region. So relatively low participation from the Middle East, Latin America, and Africa. And Oceania, which is Australia and New Zealand, is slightly disproportionately represented given its size and things. And of course, Asia is grossly, and Africa, underrepresented. So this is our breakdown by age. And as you can see from that, the median age is somewhere in the 45 to 64 range, probably the 45 to 54 range. So this is not a young organization. People have been here for quite some time, and that does make some difference about the way that people perceive things. And then when we look at the breakdown by gender, as you can see, this is very, very heavily male-oriented organization. We have more and more women joining, and so I don't know if you remember, I have a slide, but this is changing noticeably amongst new participants. We have a quite different breakdown there, but this is our current breakdown. Just to be clear, this is not something that many of us want to see as the way that it continues, but we think it's important to be transparent. And this level of transparency is something you will see throughout the IETF. So looking at employment, most people are employed. Some are business owners, some are independent contractors, and a small number retired and students. And most people are in business, but then we have academia coming in next, and then the civil society and not-for-profit after that. So we are still quite a broad representation of people, just heavily weighted towards people employed by industry. And then we ask people when they first participated. And so, as you can see, we have, people right out in 1986. And we have a relatively long, there are some ups and downs of curves here, but we have people who do stay for a very long time and do continue to participate for a very long time. Some might say that's because it takes a long time to get things done, but generally this is because people find it potentially quite, well, they do find it very rewarding and absorbing and do stay. It is not unusual for people who, when they change employer, to make it a condition of their employment that they continue to participate in the IETF. So the structure of the IETF, this is really quite simple. We have a number of leadership bodies, and these are the leadership bodies across the top in different ways. The black is the IETF LLC, which I work for. The yellow is the IESG. The IESG are actually the people in charge, despite the way that this looks. We have the IAB over in red, and I'll talk a little bit more about these, but underneath the IESG, we have the areas down in yellow, the working group chairs, the working groups, and the various parts, the teams and other things down the bottom. And under the IAB, we have workshops and programs that you'll see. And then many of you may be here for the IRTF, the research task force. That's over on the far left, and we have the research groups showing there. These other bits will become clearer over time. This is effectively meant to show who appoints who. And the one takeaway from this is that it is extremely difficult to capture the IETF because we have such a complex structure of appointments between people and things. And almost all of this is volunteers and volunteer run. So, as I said, the Internet Engineering Steering Group, the IESG, has overall responsibility for the standards process and technical management of the IETF. They're the people in charge. They are the area directors and the IETF chair, Roman Danulu. And so you will meet them, a number of them, at the new participant sessions that we've got today and later in the week. The Internet Architecture Board, long-term technical direction for the Internet architecture, and it's responsible for external engagement, both liaisons and other engagement. And it does a number of the key appointments, and that's chaired by Tommy Pawley. Then we have the IRSG, which manages the Internet Research Task Force, longer-term research issues, chaired by Dirk Kuscher now, and they write RFCs, the research groups, but they don't produce standards. This is very much a research thing, and they work differently. Research does not have an end goal. Research is research. So it's a smaller part of things, but an important part of the overall IETF. The IETF Administration LLC that I work for is the corporate and legal home. We do finances, contracted services, we arrange the meetings, we do the legal side of things and IT. I have a board who are volunteers appointed through the nominating committee and paid staff, and a number of important contracts that we'll discuss. And as noticed, we have no influence over the technical content of internet standards. When I joined the role, I had to promise never to do that again, which was a relief. But no, I had to make sure not to be involved in there again. Then we have the IETF Trust. This is a separate organisation that owns the intellectual property of the IETF to keep it safe and protect it from anything that might happen here. Um, the, the Internet Society is best described perhaps as the parent of the IETF. It's an international non-profit membership organisation, and it provides significant funding to the IETF, and the IETF LLC is a subsidiary of the Internet Society. So this is the Internet Engineering Steering Group, the people that you will see around. Hopefully you will meet. This is the IAB. So as you can see from both of these slides, relatively low gender diversity, relatively good, regional diversity. That's the way of the IETF. And then, so on the administration side, there's me again. And then on the left, we have the Secretariat. This is the team that plans and manages IETF meetings and provides administrative support to the whole IETF. This is the team here, though they now wear green tops, not these turquoise tops. So you'll spot them around. Michelle works for the Secretariat. And then we have some IETF LLC staff who do finance, communications, IT, software development and things. So we also have two specialist technical services, the RFC Production Centre, who work for us as well, who are a team of staff who edit and publish RFCs. So when the volunteers do the work and a document is ready to be published, we then pass it to people who maintain the consistency of the series. And the last presentation of today will talk more about that and give you an understanding of that. And then we have a related organisation, ICANN, that runs the Internet Assigned Numbers Authority, which is the online registry of code points for IETF protocols. And they are here representing IANA and able to answer questions as well. Right. Then one of the specialist volunteer roles that we have is the nominating committee. So going back to my structure diagram over here, I'm sure you all remember this anyway, but just in case, we have here in the orangey beige there, the nominating committee. So this is constituted new every year, a new group of volunteers that is chosen by a random lot process that is defined in an RFC written by a cryptographer some years ago. And that those people then interview candidates and make the appointments for most of these other bodies up here. So, and the nominating committee is now actively advertising for roles for starting in March of next year. So coming forward again. So that's the nominating committee. Then we have the independent submissions editor. So you'll learn more about this later, but we actually have a number of different ways, streams we call them, pathways for an RFC to be published. And one of those is the independent submission stream. And so we have an appointed volunteer who manages that stream. And then possibly one of the most important sets of volunteer roles are the ombuds team. So these are a group of volunteers who assist with any code of conduct or harassment issues. There is a policy they follow, and these are the 5 of them here. 3 of them will be on site. And the community empowers these people with significant authority. These are the people who can decide that if somebody has violated the code of conduct, they can be expelled from the meeting, they can be expelled from the IETF, they can take whatever sanctions they wish. So this is, again, an example of how it is a volunteer-created process where the volunteers are in charge and the volunteers make the decisions about these things. And so from my side as the professional staffer, I would assist with providing them legal advice, for example, but they are the people in charge of these things. So it's a very clear and strong process for managing code of conduct. Then we have one team called the IETF Sisters. This offers women and non-binary IETF participants an opportunity to meet and exchange knowledge and experience. As we noted, from our gender breakdown is not representative of the wider world amongst us, probably not representative of software development, maybe representative of engineering world, not entirely sure, but certainly something that we feel needs to change. And so this is one mechanism aiming to address that. Right, funding. The corporation that I work for, the IETF LLC, is a US not-for-profit. We are not a pay-to-play standards development organization. So there is no mechanism where somebody could buy a leadership role in the IETF. You can come and offer me $1 million. I will say, thank you very much. I will take it, but it will not buy you anything. And that is almost unique. There are many of us who feel that if the IETF did not exist, you would not be able to create it anymore, because so many people would want to be able to buy influence. So this is one of the few places where you cannot buy influence. So we receive money from 4 key sources. From the Internet Society, our parent organization, as I mentioned, 7.3 million in this year. Registration fees for meetings. We do unfortunately need to charge a fee for meetings because we otherwise could not afford to run them. So almost 2.5 million from that. Now, we receive corporate sponsorship at about 1.75 million. We have a number of people who work for corporates who recognize the value of the IETF and who ensure that their corporates sponsor us for not a lot of anything in return. They get recognition, but they're doing it because they want the IETF to succeed and they want the IETF to go forward. They're not buying influence by doing that. And so this is very important for us. And we get free equipment and services, and we get donations as well. So that's how we make our money. So, as I said, we're a not-for-profit. We don't have excess funds or any large foundation or anything. Right, so briefly onto policies. How much time do I have left? Right, okay. Well, we have one person in the queue. So whoever it is, would anybody like to come up and ask their question?
Mohammed, are you in the room or are you online? So go ahead and come up to the microphone in the middle here.
No, it's good. No, please do.
And we're all going to watch Mohammed practice stating your name clearly.
Back down there to the mic. Oh, that's it, lovely. Yeah, it's on there, good.
Okay, hello, I'm Mohamed.
Hi.
I'm coming from Côte d'Ivoire. I'm working for University Fouet-Boigny. I'm no question yet. It's my first time to attend as the other new participant, and in the Meet Echo, I have seen the request slides functionality. So maybe I misunderstood the purpose of this option.
Okay.
So it was not a question.
Okay.
I just wanted to have a copy of the slides.
Right. All right.
Thank you.
No problem.
So much.
Okay. Thank you, Mohammed. Thank you. See how easy it is to come up and ask questions here. This is an organization where people talk, and some people apparently come here to talk for the entire week. So please do come and talk. It is very important. Right. So I'm going to talk about policies. Whenever any working group session starts or any session starts in the IETF, this is the slide we normally show. The note well, it's called. It means basically here are some things you should remember about IETF policies. By participating, you agree to follow our policies. And you cannot participate without doing that. That's straightforward. One of the big things that we ask is about disclosure of patents or patent applications on any technology. And we make it a requirement that people need to disclose any patents that they know about that may affect what is being worked on, even if they are not the owner of that. It is important for us in an open and transparent organization to understand these things. We have a privacy policy, but we operate in a very transparent way, very, very transparent way. And I'll talk more about this a little bit later, but it is sometimes surprising to people just how transparent we are. So we have the Internet Standards process, which will be talked about, and the working group processes that we talked about. We then have two conduct policies, the anti-harassment procedures and the code of conduct policies that we ask people to be familiar with. They're much the same as you might expect anywhere else. You come here with the expectation that you respect other people and the people respect you. Then we have our two about intellectual property, about copyright and patents. When you participate in the IETF, when you send an email, you write a document or anything like that, you retain the copyright, but you are giving the IETF rights to use your work. And that's important because otherwise we could not operate as a standards organization. So everything you provide to the IETF, we classify as a contribution. And when you do that, you're giving us a basic grant of rights. Now, we give that to the IETF Trust on our behalf, but you're giving it to the IETF. So that's anything said or written in an IETF working group or a birds of feather session. Any session, basically, is anything as a contribution there. Anything written on an IETF mailing list, including the list anywhere, and any document submitted. So this is important because sometimes people bring an idea, do not get the idea adopted, and then want to take their idea away. And we say, no, sorry, you've given it to us. It's now an idea that stays here. We do occasionally get very upset people about that. And what you're doing by contributing is you're granting the IETF Trust a perpetual, irrevocable, read the legal wording at the bottom, okay? A license to use your contributions. So privacy and transparency. So as explained, we operate in an exceptionally transparent way that surprises many people. We publish and almost never redact many things. So that's the name, organizations, and country codes of all meeting participants. Audio, video, and transcripts of meetings. Messages to most mailing lists, and somebody will talk you through the mail archive later, and instant messaging logs. All formal communications received, subpoenas, letters, intellectual property disclosures, and these things. We don't sell your data, and we do keep confidential certain things such as applications for roles, grants, payment information, and other things. We're not driven by any ideology here, but we have to work as a transparent organization for the legitimacy of the IETF. And I will regularly get somebody new telling me this is not GDPR compliant. We have a room full of GDPR lawyers. Yes, we are GDPR compliant, okay? So, but please be aware it is a very unusual way of operating. Right, so do we have any questions at all? Sorry, I should have said, please now line up for the questions that you all wish to ask. And so when you come to the microphone, please introduce yourself, ask a question. Lovely, thank you. That's a standard way it works.
Hello, good morning. My name is Hugo Cordova, and I work at the European Parliament, and before I worked in the European Commission on standards.
Yeah.
And my question is, I know that for Etsy, they have a lot of problems with patents, actually, and with royalties. And you explained it a bit how you deal with it. but I want to know if you have some problems with business trying to sue you regarding patents, or the use of patents, how you actually, this policy works. That's the question.
One important thing to note is that the IETF is not the target largely of any legal action. Any patent disputes are between IETF participants. So we operate on a disclosure basis. We require people to disclose whether they believe they have IPR patents. We do not we do not make any judgment as to the validity of that. We ask for the disclosure so that the working group can know about it and the working group participants can make a decision about it. So this is covered more in another part of the presentations later on in a bit more detail. But we do have, sometimes late disclosures where a working group has finished its work and only then does somebody disclose a patent that may be applicable. And we do have procedures for managing that, but this is never a clean area. This is always going to be messy. And so we leave it to every individual case largely for the working group and the working group to make their decisions about applicability. While there is a preference for unencumbered technology, there is a recognition that we often have to have it, and so people make their own decisions about that. Okay. Any other questions at all?
You can probably mention in session 5 they talk about.
Right, thank you. So that's in session 5, advanced topics. Yes, where Leslie will be talking more about patents and intellectual property. Okay, please come to the microphone. Thank you.
This is Hiroyuki Sano. I'm curious about digital identity and credentials. My question is, what is individual participation? I'm an individual and employees of a company. So I registered IETF by my company email address, but is it not recommended? Should I use my private account?
No, people do use their company. People are clear that they are paid employees and they are being paid by their company to come here. No, what it means is about the authority that any company has is not there. We expect people to bring that everybody is treated equally, and we hope that people bring their own knowledge and their own views, not just follow their company views. Now, that is difficult for some people, certainly. Do we talk about this more? Do you talk about this more, Bron, in your? No. Okay, so yeah, I understand it's complicated, but it's really about the influence that corporations have. But we certainly do want people to be transparent that they are employed by somebody here, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Just making sure we have Loic in the queue. Great.
Perfect. Loic Kliemann, working for T-Systems. I have a question, something about I saw on the website that the IETF has already planned out the next IETF meetings, I think, till 2033.
Yes.
And all of those meetings only happen on 3 continents, which is North America, Europe, and Asia.
Yes.
Why only those 3 continents? Are there any plans to also go to different continents around the world?
So we have a policy that is a rotation policy that is to rotate across those 3 continents or those 3 regions. We can introduce an exploratory meeting where one of those we can replace with a meeting outside of that. So I think, was it last year or the year before, we went to Australia, to Brisbane, for example. And I live in New Zealand and everybody wants me to arrange a meeting in New Zealand, so that may happen at some point. But we do look at other places from time to time, but until recently, it required community consensus to agree to meet somewhere else, and that was too high a bar. And so last year, the policy was changed, and there is a new RFC that now leaves it down to me and my board to make that decision about based on consultation. So we will probably see more exploratory meetings happening. Now, we have many people who would like us to meet in Africa, in sub-Saharan Africa in particular, and we have occasionally some people who like us to meet in South America as well. So we are looking at it, but it has not been well developed in the past. It's been very occasional.
Hello, my name is Yann Kerhervé. I really appreciate the transparency you're showing today. And it feels to me that in my own experience working in the industry, the numbers of underrepresented groups are exacerbated here. It feels like things are changing faster in the industry. We certainly have fewer than 82% of the software engineers and technical staff members being males. Why do you think that is? Although you said it's changing, and I'm sure transparency helps with that, why do you think that is? And which group, which body in the IETF is responsible for tracking these numbers and trying to affect change? Have you tried, or do you have plans for catching up in a way? Like anything else we can do as attendees to help with that?
Okay, I will answer your questions in reverse order. So all of the leadership bodies in the IETF are responsible for attempting to tackle this problem. And all of the leadership bodies have agreed that they need to be doing that. About 2-3 years ago, we commissioned an independent report of the experiences of women in the IETF. Somebody came in and interviewed multiple people in the IETF, many women in the IETF, and produced a report of things to help us understand what barriers women have within the IETF that may be causing this gender disparity. And just to be clear, for us, it is the gender disparity that is by far the largest concern, more than regional disparity and other things at the moment. We do want to tackle those other things, but the gender bit is the higher part so far. And there are a number of different things identified that we've done some things about. One of them has been about training program to enter the IETF. So this whole day training program, this is the second time we are running this. We've written it completely as a whole new program, trained people, produced whole new content and everything to help with that process. A second thing has been about recognition. There have been lots of concerns that we have sometimes allowed the loudest voices to see more recognition than those who contribute otherwise. And so there are active discussions and active things underway to deal with recognition, to make sure that people's contributions are properly recognised. And then through the appointment process as well, people have been, last year did unconscious bias training to make sure that they are that their appointment process is following a neutral process in that way as well. Now, that does mean, because we have a relatively low proportion of women within the organisation, that we are slightly disproportionately appointing women then into leadership bodies, but that's a necessary thing to do in order to get to the stage where we have better gender representation. So that's really the work going on at the moment. There are other things that we have another session this week to discuss this. So it's an ongoing program, but one of the things we are still trying to understand more about is the companies that send people here, what influences their choices. And so far, this program today is one of the biggest things that we've heard we need to do in order to address that, but we're still looking for more information there.
Thank you.
Okay, great, thank you. We're going to make this the last question, okay, for timing.
Sure.
Thank you. No, you have plenty of time.
I'm Devupam from Microsoft Research India, and I work on distributed AI infra, sustainable AI, and low Earth orbit satellite networks. I had organized some LEO side meetings at IETF in the past, and I currently also serve in the committee that is in charge of awarding ANRP. My question to you is, you mentioned that decisions are mostly taken based on rough consensus and not voting. So I'm curious to understand more how that is done.
I think we will have quite a bit about that later in one of the later sessions. In session 3, the Internet Standards Process. And so I will leave it to them, if that's okay, to do that, because they have slides and they will talk through that in some detail.
Awesome.
Okay.
Looking forward to it.
Great. Thank you. Great. Well, thank you all very much. Thank you. We're over to our
So I'm gonna switch over the slides real quick. We don't have an official break between session 1 and session 2 because they're both fairly short. And just a reminder, if you do have questions, practice putting yourself in the queue, because that'll be useful when you are participating in the working group meetings throughout the week. So give me a second and I'll switch over the slides.
Thank you.
That's it right there. I'm just making sure.
All right.
Look at that, we're in business.
You're learning your lesson about naming slides so that you can tell what they are from the list.
Ron, do you want to test that, make sure that's working?
Sure.
I might have to, nothing's happening.
No.
Okay, hold on 1 second. And
Yes.
we're working.
There we go. All right. Now I just need to adjust this microphone to my height. I would love questions throughout the session. Thank you.
So feel free to join the queue during the session. Ron will happily take questions throughout the presentation.
All right. Hello, everybody. We're at session 2 of your massively long day here. So thank you for being awake and joining us here this morning. My name is Bron. I am one of the working group chairs at the IETF. As you saw on that picture that Jay showed earlier with yellow, you can tell by the blue dot on people's badges that they're a working group chair. That makes perfect sense. I'm chair of a couple of working groups that are both in the art area, which is applications in real time. So I'm doing email and calendar work. That's one small component of the IETF. You might find that you're doing something completely different. I do recommend looking around and seeing all the different things that are happening at the IETF. But yeah, if you're involved in anything email or calendar, you'll see me around. This note well document, did we cover this in the first session at all? Excellent. You've already seen this. As Jay said, regarding patents, you need to disclose if you're aware of patents that you or your organization own related to work that you bring. And there's lots of good stuff about behaving well as well in all of this. All right. Email. The IETF runs on email. I've got a couple of stickers here. I read your email, and this meeting could have been an email. I'll talk a little bit more about why this meeting can't entirely be an email later. But you can see we do surveys. The IETF loves doing surveys and finding out, because we have so many people, finding out what people actually are interested in. Mailing lists by far are the most popular way still. Why is this so low? For people to communicate in the IETF and to make decisions. And all decisions are eventually made on the mailing list. Also, as Jay said, contributions on the mailing list belong to the IETF. No takebacks. When you send an email, you've said that thing. And it stays short of really bad disclosures that need to be deleted from the archives. Everything is available in the archive. Everything's public. You can go back and see emails that were written 30, 40 years ago to IETF mailing lists and follow the discussion that happened at the time, which is really important for being able to understand how and why we got to where we are. All right, there's the announcement mailing lists. Hopefully everyone in this room is on at least one of those announcement mailing lists, which is the announcement for this particular meeting. There we go. There's also individual working group mailing lists. That's where most of the work happens. So any particular area that you're involved in, get on the mailing lists, learn how to use the tooling in your email system to hopefully filter them off into folders so you don't see everything, because there's a lot of email. I get hundreds of emails a day from various IETF lists. But that's great because it means you can search through and find what you're interested in. So I would definitely join the working group lists of any working group you're interested in. And you can go look in the archives as well online to see what's been discussed before you join the list. IETF general list, it's fairly busy. I find it's worthwhile. Some people see it's too much and don't follow it. I'd definitely follow announce though. Last call, I'm one of the moderators on there. That's very high volume. I just skim through to see if people are behaving themselves pretty much on there, unless it's a topic I'm particularly interested in. And then there's some specific lists for interest areas as well. I think there's even one for people who are going running early in the morning here. All right, so it's a standard mailing list. It's Mailman. You can now create a single account to manage all your subscriptions. Once you've subscribed to any mailing list within the IETF, you can send to any of the mailing lists, which is new since I started and is fantastic. It means you don't have to be on all the lists just to be able to contribute. But you do need to sign into the data tracker and sign up for mailing lists in the first place, just to say that you've agreed to the note well, you've agreed to behave yourself. And decisions are always made on the mailing list. So whatever gets discussed in the meetings here today, we don't make final binding decisions for the IETF here. They go out through the mailing list. I believe later you'll see the whole convoluted process that an idea goes through to become a published document. But part of that is going to be a consensus call on a mailing list. And so, as long as you're paying attention to the mailing lists, you have a chance to contribute to any document that goes to the IETF and to put your perspective in on it. All right. This is what the website looks like. Feel free to log in, poke around, look. It is very hard to break things if you don't have the permission to actually change things in there. So you can go in, you can look through, you can search for any topic you're interested in and find out what's been discussed on the mailing lists. I'm not going to spend heaps of time on everything, but do feel free to pop in if you have any questions on this. The skill of writing good email. Very important. At the end of it, email is about communicating your ideas and hopefully understanding other people's ideas. And so writing emails that are understandable, writing emails that get your point across, that hopefully don't get misunderstood. We know emails compared to face-to-face, it's a lot harder to understand subtle nuances. It's a lot easier to get angry. You'll see some of that on mailing lists, hopefully not too much of it, but people do, particularly when something controversial is being discussed, get quite reactive. And particularly if you're seeing a whole stack of messages that happen while you're asleep and going through replying to them quickly, it's worth slowing down a little bit, reading all the discussion that's happened and formulating a clear response to what's happened rather than dealing with each message individually as you see it. So I definitely recommend, if you've been away for a little bit and coming back to a discussion, seeing the whole state that the discussion's got to. And if something is getting too quickly back and forth in email, stepping back for a little bit, giving it time to settle before you reply. And there's some other little things there about just general email etiquette that it's worth, again, think about the fact that your email is going to potentially tens, hundreds, thousands of people who will all be reading it. So respect their time by making it as clear as possible. And being good at email will make you more influential. And at the end, that's a really valuable thing for why we're here, is to try and influence. Just stepping back from this a little bit, standards live for a long time. And the work we do here lives for a long time. We're building the base level infrastructure for how the internet works. And so being involved in that, being able to influence that, really builds kind of a long-term legacy for your work. And so working on being good at that is definitely something I would recommend doing. And I think that's why people, as Jay said, why people stay here for so long, is that they realize that this is really important work that we're doing and really valuable work. So yeah, get good at it. Data Tracker. This is the tooling that we use to interact with the documents in progress. It is the centralized login system. I can see down here too. Fantastic. So there's heaps of stuff in Data Tracker. And again, I would recommend poke around in it. It takes a while to learn where everything is. And so just spend some time looking and learning your way around. There's information on all the people there. There's information on all the various groups. Documents. Now I think we've got this page here. It's got some links across the top and allows you to search for any document. I spend most of my time on individual working group pages, and in the meetings section there's a click down that brings you to the agenda, and I think we have a page on that as well that will tell you everything here. And you also log in through Data Tracker first to get into MetaEcho, to get into the notes. So in most sessions, someone will be taking notes. We'll ask for a scribe to take notes about what has happened in the meeting, and that's in a shared document editing system as well. And Zulip is the chat system. Also, you've all logged in on your device. You can see the chat for this session. That's mirrored between the systems. So when you're in your little Data Tracker view, you can see the discussion that's happening kind of in a side channel to this. And some of that has been happening during this session as well. All right. There wasn't a slide with a picture of that. There was a question earlier about the slide button in the meeting session. So what that actually is a request to control slides. I've got this little clicker that allows me to control because I'm on site. If you're remote or if you're not up here and it's your slides on the screen, you can request control that allows you to move backwards and forwards through the slides or to change which slides are showing. That's what that particular button is. On the agenda page, it also shows every single session, and there's a bunch of buttons next to them, which I think there was a slide either in my deck or someone else's deck that shows what those little icons are. One of them is meeting materials, and in there you'll see all the slides. Every slide that's been presented in these sessions generally is available in the Data Tracker forever. Same as everything else, all the materials are there. So you'll be able to download the slide deck as a PDF for any session that you're in. All right. Moving on to this. These in-person meetings. We're at one now. Here we are for this whole week in one of the locations that generally are something that's reasonably easy for a large portion of the world to get to, that has facilities, a large enough space for us to meet in, and enough food around to match the dietary requirements of this diverse group of people. There's a whole thing for the people who are interested in the decisions about why IETF goes to particular locations. There's whole discussions. Guess what? It's in the mailing lists. You can go read all the discussions of how we came to the decisions of where we meet and why. So anything, not only how the work's done and how the specific documents are built, but how the IETF runs, all the discussions are available online. That's something very unique to this group. I haven't seen anything where the process of how we get to where we are is as open as the IETF. But it also means there's a lot to learn if you want to understand anything. All right, so there's a lot of things happening this week. There are parallel, I think it's 8 sessions we've got in parallel, 8 or 9 sessions at the same time, multiple times per day throughout the week. There's tons happening. There's always something to go to, often too many things to go to, and you have to select one of them to attend, show up, scan the code so that we know how many people are in the room and we know which sessions need a bigger space next time. The agenda's all in Data Tracker, so you can go in and see, and then you can click through from anything and see what the working group's about or what the session's about. See the agenda. Hopefully most of them have agendas. see any materials that have been uploaded. So often the slides that you'll see during the session are available before. You can even see, you can get some previews and spoilers about what's going to happen. Sessions look like this. There's a person up the front with a microphone. There's 2 screens, one of which will often have the QR code on it. If someone joins remotely, I don't think we have anyone going to do that during the day, but if so, they will appear on one of these screens, larger than life, if they turn on their video, and their sound will come through. Again, pretty much any organization I've been involved in, IETF does a really good job of blending the local and remote. So someone remote will appear in the queue, same as people in the room. They'll speak in order. You'll be able to hear them just as well as you can hear me. And if you look around you, you'll see power, you'll see seats, there's water up the back. All right. Meeting etiquette. All this stuff. Behave yourself. Take it in turns. Don't stand at the microphone and hog it. Step back. Different sessions are run different ways. You'll see a lot of different chairing styles. A lot of the sessions I chair are quite small. I might only have 15, 20 people in the room. There'll be 2 or 3 people who are the key participants in a particular document. And sometimes I'll just let them stand at the microphone and speak backwards and forwards directly, not stand on ceremony about people getting in the queue, because it gets things solved faster, and that's fine. So different groups will operate in different ways. If you have 200 people in the room, you need to run a queue. You need to close the queue, because otherwise people might start in the first topic and spend the whole 2 hours discussing one topic. So you will see time control happening. You might not get to everything. You might not all get a chance to speak, but as much as possible, we try and let everyone be involved. If you don't get to say your thing, guess what? There's a mailing list, and decisions always get confirmed on the mailing list. So you'll definitely get a chance to discuss things. All right, so just before we move on from this, I think one of the real values of being in person is that you're not just in the meetings. You'll see people in the corridor. You'll see people sitting at breakfast. You might sit out by the pool and chat. There's a lot of chance to meet people, to get to know them, and to build that trust that allows people to realize that you're someone who understands things and maybe has a clue. And that really makes a big difference, because at the end, we're trying to build consensus, and you build consensus through trust and understanding. And we build trust and understanding as humans better face-to-face than we do on a mailing list impersonally. And that's why these plenary sessions, these in-person meetings are really valuable. So it's fantastic that you're here. Take advantage of that. Take advantage of a chance to meet people involved in the areas you're interested in. Find out who really understands those topics and get to know them so that they know and trust you. And when you send your idea on the mailing list, they'll take you more seriously. And that's just how humans work. So that's really valuable. All right, dots. There's lots of different colored dots that say which of all the various groups that are involved in the IETF people are part of. Hopefully no one has all those dots. That would be ridiculous. But I've got the little blue one on mine that says chair. If you look at people's badges, you'll see their name and kind of what they're involved in. It's great. Do wear your lanyard as much as possible so that people can remember who you are. And this red line says, I'd prefer not to be in photographs. And so that's a chance that they'll look at photos and say, okay, this has got red lanyards in. We won't publish that. So if you want to be in photos, wear a white lanyard. There's lots of ribbons. You can put as many as you like on your badge. I've only got 2, which is less than usual, but you can add more during the week too. That's a bit of fun. All right. There will be a photographer floating around. Try not to stare at them too much. Okay. Yeah, so this is Data Tracker. Hopefully you've seen some of this. The agenda. This is last time's agenda. What's going on? Yeah, old slides. This page I spend a lot of time on during the meeting. It shows what's happening at any particular time. You can see all the little buttons next to each item. If you mouse over each of them, it'll tell you what it is. But you can join with the full tool right here in the room and see the video feed. You can join on your phone just with the little tool, which allows you to press a button that says, I'd like to speak, which no one has yet, but feel free to pop up anytime. And you can also see the meeting materials there. The first of those icons will pop up a little page that shows all the PDF files of all the slides that are going to be used during a session. People generally upload their slides in advance of the session. Otherwise, we get grumpy at them because it makes it much harder for the chairs if the slides aren't already loaded in the data tracker. And the person sitting here at the front desk can see all those slides and can choose what to present up on the screen. So this is a piece of technology that's come through in the last few years, and it's really handy to have all the slides preloaded and to control them all through data tracker and through Meet Echo. So all the materials are there. The list of participants will be available through the meeting information as well after the meeting, so you can see who was there in the session. Again, as with everything I've said, log in, click around, check it out. Spend some time getting to know these tools so when you need to use them, you understand where everything is. But it's not too difficult. This is a little bit of a maze, this hotel. It's not too bad, but you'll be able to see the name of the room for each session. And there are a couple of places around that have a map that show where everything is. I think there's even a map available in Data Tracker, but I haven't checked. So there is, yeah. So you can look in Data Tracker as well and see the map that tells you where all the rooms are to find where you want to go for any session. You can jump around quickly to which day it is, and there will be a little red box around the current time in there so you can see where you are if you've forgotten. All right. We have an amazingly good network throughout the hotel and particularly in all the meeting rooms. There's a team that runs not only stuff that works, but experimental new things as well. And so there's lots of different SSIDs. You can, again, play around with all of them. I think there's information on the back of the badge that tells you how to log into the standard IETF. And it just works. And in the last couple of years, they've even got organized enough to update all the mapping systems to believe that you're in the current city you're in. I remember a few years ago, you'd log into the IETF network and the browser would suddenly believe you're in the last city that the IETF had been in. But I think that's all been fixed now. Awesome. Zulip is yet another chat system. There are too many chat systems. The IETF has a working group called MIMI on instant messaging chat systems interoperability. But Zulip is a stream and topic-based chat system. Again, play with it, find your way around. You can join the remote chat for multiple sessions. So you can be in one session and heckling in the chat in a different session, and that all just works. But all the information for this side channel chat that happens during meetings is available in Zulip, and you can use the Zulip client to get a richer experience, or you can just use the chat on the side of Meet Echo. It all works. All right. There's a wiki. It has, hey, this is a current one. Has lots of information about what's going on around the meeting. Again, you can log in, poke through that, update it if you want. This is the tool that we're in now. Hopefully you can see either this or the smaller version of it on your device right now. You can see a list of everyone who's currently in the meeting. In either of the tools, you can go to the list of participants and scroll through to see. You can directly message anyone else who's in the room, who's in the session, whether they're here in person or not, through this tool. And you can add yourself to the queue, and you can also request to share screen, share slides through this system. So you will spend a lot of time logging into here. Hopefully you'll remember to log in each time you enter a room so that we know you are there. And certainly if you speak, you're required to. All right. And with that, any questions?
And this is also a great opportunity if you haven't yet added yourself to the queue, just to test it to make sure it works on your machine. Feel free to do that, and you can take yourself right out even if you don't have a question. But it's
That was very quick, Sean.
Yeah, it's a great
On, off.
opportunity to do that here. There's no mistakes there, so feel free to test it out even if you don't have a question.
All right. Good work, everyone. See heaps of names flashing up.
While we wait to see if there's any more questions, we do have a break after this session, about 15 minutes. We're going to start up at 11 o'clock with session 3, talking about the standards process, which is a lot of the meat of the IETF and how does everything get started and what journey does it go on, and tips and helpful things to help you get your ideas listened to and presented in the IETF. So it's really a great session. We're going to pause just to see if there's any more questions. Yeah.
All right.
Oh, Jay's going to come to the queue.
Are you in the queue, Jay?
No, sorry.
Oh, okay.
Jay Daly. Bron, can you tell us a bit about when you started in the IETF?
Sure.
And what got you interested?
So I started in the IETF in 2017, and kind of ridiculously, I showed up with one of these blue dots on my badge already. I have never not been a working group chair in my entire time at IETF. I was tangentially involved in IETF many years before that by joining some of the mailing lists. I have some embarrassing messages if you go back and search my early contributions to IETF and various flame wars I got involved in early on about IMAP standards. I work for a company called Fastmail, which is an email hosting system. So we similar to Gmail or that kind of system. We provide a webmail. We store people's email on our servers. And we've been involved in building JMAP, which is a standard for kind of modern email, which is also calendars and contacts now. And so I started with the JMAP working group because I had an idea that I wanted to make available to the rest of the world. And the IETF was the best place to advance that. For a few years before coming to the IETF, I socialized that idea among other email companies to make sure it made sense, and then brought it here. And I found straight away, it was tough to learn your way around this system. We didn't have this back when I joined the IETF. I got dragged off into a room with one other person and explained some of how the system works. She was also a brand new working group chair. But other than that, it was find your own way around. It takes a while. There's a lot to learn. This helps. It's still going to take some work on your behalf to learn your way around. But straight away we came in and I discovered you need to build capital with people. You need to build trust with people who've been doing this for 20 years and need to understand that you actually know what you're talking about. And so my first couple of IETF meetings were really building relationships and persuading people that I was worth listening to and that our ideas were worth listening to. And got a lot of really good feedback, and JMAP's a lot better than it was when we first brought it to the IETF because of that feedback and because of working through those discussions. It now exists, JMAP for email. Other stuff is being built on top of it. Contacts and calendars will hopefully land by the end of this year as completed sets of standards for moving personal information between client devices and servers. That's my area. It's very much layer 7, layer 8 of the stack. It's the human interaction directly with servers. There's a lot of other stuff in the IETF that I don't spend any time on and don't really know much about. But that's what I do. And that's why I've been here for getting on 8 years now. I love it. I'm really happy to be involved with the IETF. It's a fantastic group of people. I can see why people keep coming back. It's probably not for everybody, but many, many years ago, I worked in America over 20 years ago for a pharmaceutical early stage clinical trial company. And I think the one thing that I actually did that added any value there was getting them to standardize on the year, month, day, date format for internal data transfer, because standards define how people do things. And so it really is the base level and it's long lived. And so I think work we do here, as I said earlier, is really, really valuable and it will last a long time. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Okay, so we'll meet back in 15 minutes. Stretch your legs. There's plenty of water back there. Hydrate, take a little break, check email, do whatever you need to do, and we'll see you back in 15. If you have any questions, also, I'm up here. Feel free to stop and say hello.
Yeah, no, I ended up in the wrong one. No, I wait, so I was looking earlier, I was like, calendar entries. You download a calendar entry. Yeah, ages ago. Yeah.
Okay, we're going to get started.
Good morning, all. Could you please take seats?
And do you guys have questions?
Right. So just please take seats if you're about to listen. So the session 3, let me try and move this down a bit, of your new participant program is about standards development. So Benoit and I are going to talk to you a bit about the process of how you write the documents and how that goes through. Oh, you're very good at this. Oh yes, please could you scan the QR code for the session if you haven't already done so, so you've logged in, so that'd be great. Thank you. So session 3, standards development. You've had 2 sessions already talking about an introduction to the IETF and participating in the IETF, and now we've got a session that's giving you more details on exactly how you go through the process. If you were to bring work into the IETF, what would that look like? What are the steps you go through? What's a bit more about the organization to do with sort of producing standards within the IETF? And you've got Benoit and I that are going to lead you through the session. We're welcome to take questions as we go through. We'll try and manage the time. We're also welcome to take questions at the end. So I'd like to introduce myself. I've been coming to the IETF for about 10 years. And in fact, it was this guy here that first encouraged me to come along to the IETF and said, just come along and bring a document related to Yang. And I didn't really know much about the IETF, and I didn't really think about too much about it. And I just turned up. I managed to get a slot to present, and I presented my work. And that was a great experience for me. And it was great having people to help sort of guide me through the process. But as I came, I realized actually it's a very strange organization, and there's various things you need to learn. But over the time, I came on a regular basis. I eventually ended up being an area director for 4 years and stopped 2 years ago. And I'm now currently the Green Working Group Chair. I'm just going to ask Benoit to introduce himself as well.
So good morning. My name is Benoit. I joined the IETF in 2001. And I was scared like hell because I had to present something in front of the people who kind of invented and standardized the internet. So I'm still there after so many years. I still have a passion. I still wear proudly my IETF t-shirt, which I'm going to mention later. So all these years I've been involved into the operations and management of the internet. So all these years I've been having multiple hats. Sometimes it's a individual contributor, sometimes a co-author on standard document. I wrote RFCs, I've been workgroup chairs and area directors, and I still enjoy that today. So the goal of this session on the entire day is to demystify the fact that you come to the IETF and you can be part of this community.
And this is where Benoit's too tall and I have to move the mic down. So the note well, you'll get to see and love this very well. You'll see it in all the sessions, and it's just to remind you about the rules of any IETF meeting and what your obligations are. So normally there's some time to sit and go through this. I believe we've gone through the note well in detail already, so we won't go spend too much time on this for this particular session. But it is, be aware, this is an IETF session and the note well applies to this like any other IETF meeting. So the first bit I would like to talk to you is about working groups and areas, because that's how the IETF is structured, and understanding that will help you find which parts of the IETF to participate in and go to, and help you understand how these things fit together. So we have 7 different areas. They're not all quite equal, and they are roughly to split and coordinate similar work together. The areas are not fixed in stone. They do change over time, but relatively gradually. So over the 10 years I've been in the IETF, there's been sort of one change in the area split. In a moment, I'll talk to you about working groups that come and go, that go into those areas, and they change more frequently. You see those changing, but the areas are relatively static. And each of the areas sort of covers one technology area, but it's not exactly strict. You'll find that some of the work can span across multiple areas, and you just have to find a home of where to put the work. And sometimes that's to do with the people who are leading those areas, what their expertise might be, or it might be just in terms of balancing the workload. So just to run through these, we've got the art area, applications real time, and this is sort of to do with applications that are sitting up at layer 7. So real time communications might be an example, email might be another example. These working groups are quite spread out in different technologies, it's quite broad, and that's the highest level one. We've got the Gen area, which is focusing on the IETF processes. So this one's a really unusual area. Normally the people who go to this are the ones who want to understand the processes about the IETF and to change those. So if you want to rewrite the rules about how IETF produces standards, that's the area to go through. Unlike the other areas, this one has only one AD rather than most of them having 2 or occasionally 3. And the AD for the area, the area director for that area is also the IETF chair. So it's not the same as the others, but it does count as an area. Only 3 working groups. We've got the internet area, and that's really sort of layer 3 of the OSI stack. So IPv4, IPv6, everything related to that. DNS happens to go in there as well, but it could go in other places as well. It just happens to be a good fit in terms of balancing the load. We've got the operations and management area. This is the best area by far, because that was the one I was an area director for, as is Benoit. And also it's the one that I spend most of my time in. And that's also slightly unusual in terms of it's split into two areas. And it used to be the case that the area directors had a role, one for network management, which is what Benoit and I focus on. And then the other side is network operations. How do you actually manage these networks? How do you diagnose problems in them and that sort of thing? We've got the routing area, which is the biggest area in terms of having 3 area directors rather than 2 for it. And that's all to do with routing protocols and signaling, traffic engineering, MPLS sort of ends up in there. So it's a broad reaching area that sort of spans over a lot of places. Security area, that has 2 area directors at the moment, possibly could increase over time. Again, it's a large area with a lot of work. And security is sort of interesting because security relates to all these different protocols, but there's some aspects of security that are much more focused in terms of like TLS or managing the security protocols, encryption algorithms, that sort of thing, and they get focused in the security area. And then finally, the newest area that was created is WIT, Web and Internet Transport, and that covers things like the standard transport protocols like TCP and UDP, but also the newer ones like QUIC, which is almost like a replacement for TCP. And the web side of it is really like HTTP, and web protocols and things. So those are our 7 areas that we split the work into. Yes, do you want to stand up on the mic line and ask your question?
Hello.
Hello.
Can you hear me all right? I'm Lukas Hagen. I had a question. I requested a guide as a new participant, and they had an option to sort of select areas that you're interested in.
Yeah.
And one of these was transport, TSV. I haven't seen this on the internet. I haven't seen this here. Is this like an old area that was merged into WIT, or?
Yes, so transport sort of merged into WIT. I can't remember, some of the work in transport TSV area moved to other places, but most of it went into WIT.
Thank you.
And we'll double check the guides program tool because that might need a little tweak. So thank you.
And beyond the areas, then the real work happens in working groups. And as you see, there's a large list of these. I'm not going to go through each of these in turn. But you can see that the working groups are split into different areas. And what we try to do is organize those working groups so that the people can focus particularly on particular areas, and the working groups are scheduled in a way that makes sense for those areas. It also helps that for each of those areas you had 1 or 2 area directors who are meant to be leading and controlling that area and helping move work through and solve problems and things. So again, the experts in a particular area will have the working groups that they have the knowledge for. As you can see, there's lots of different working groups for the different areas. Some of the areas have more working groups, some have fewer. Ignoring Gen, because they're sort of special, it's worth pointing out in terms of some of these, they're highlighted in bold. And these working groups are slightly more unusual in the sense that they do 1 of 2 things. They're either like an area-wide working group, like Ops AEWG would be an example, int area, where they discuss issues that span the entire area that are common issues. Or you have ones like dispatch, Gen dispatch, sec dispatch. And those are working groups that are designed for new work coming into the IETF. So they don't normally progress much work within that working group. They're mostly about bringing new work into the IETF, where people present that work and the experts in the area will comment on whether it's a good idea and whether the IETF should work on that and how to progress it. Given there's a large list of these working groups, you might wonder, well, how do I find out which ones to go to? And so Benoit's going to talk to you a little bit about the data track and how you find the information out to help you sort of guide your way and find out which of these things are most interesting. Benoit, over to you.
Thank you, Rob. So I'm not sure if it's the same for you, but sometimes people ask me, but what do you do? Right, like the neighbor, the family, and they ask, but what do you really do? And I work for the internet, and somehow the IETF has been standardizing all these protocols. So I tell them, okay, you have a voice call. Well, without the internet, without the IETF, you don't have voice over IP. Now you have like a QoS, right? Because you have a video call. And if you want to assure the quality, we've got QoS. So we work on that. So we work on the transport. We work on everything that makes people and machine communicates. We work on this. What I believe we don't do too well in the IETF is to advertise all the great things we've been doing, because it's not about bragging, it's about doing things. But evaluate all different things we're doing here and we've been doing for many years. Now, who amongst you has already been authoring an IETF draft? A few of you. Okay, very good. Do you know which working group you're targeting? Okay, very good. For all the other, we're going to see. In the previous slide, you saw a lot of working groups. There are actually too many for you. So the first thing is to check, am I more like a transport person or operation management? So you come back here and then you look in the working group that you're interested into. But what does it mean? It means that you're going to go into that tracker. And we take one of these working groups, let's say ACE. Authentication authorization for constrained environments. That looks interesting. Maybe I should know what they're doing, right? By the way, you see that we like to have acronyms that are not specifically the real working group names, but it's easier to know ACE, all right? Now, you're going to see, okay, this is the working group document with the charter. There is a charter description. What does this working group actually do? Is my IETF draft or future IETF draft targeting for that working group? So you see, this is the acronym. I'm going to come back to it. It's in security. Well, I have the security area director. I've got the chairs. So if I'm not sure, I could send them an email. I'm thinking about this work. Is this the right place? Now, other ways to check it is the charter text. And actually, it's way longer than this, right? Including the milestone. The charter, the working group is chartered to work on milestone 1, 2, 3, and 4. You have to know that. What you could be doing is reviewing also the archive, the mailing archive. Everything in the IETF is done on mails. I'm going to come back to that. There are things that are done outside of mails, but we validate every decision on the mailing list. So that's a good source of information. Now, if you believe, well, I should be subscribing because my future internet draft should target this working group. So let me subscribe there. Right, very easy. So what do I miss here? There are multiple tabs here with the documents, next slides, the meetings, etc., etc. Now, if I click on the document one, document tab, I see some IETF documents there. What's the difference between the draft that you guys have been writing and those one? Any clue? Please go to the mic quickly or shout it if it's too long, and I'm going to repeat it.
Jeff Lombardo, the draft I wrote are personal draft and those are IETF draft.
Very good. So the distinction between those drafts and the one you've been writing is that the one you've been writing start to be individual drafts. What does it mean? Look here, draft-IETF-working group name, or sorry, working group acronym, draft IETF ACE. It means that the draft that you've been writing is actually adopted in the working group document, as a working group document. It means now it belongs to the working group. We're going to cover that. Now, it's a screenshot. At the bottom, you will be seeing all of the drafts that are individual drafts, but related to ACE. So we conclude that you want to have a draft in ACE. How would the draft appear there? Because whenever you're going to select, to choose the name of your individual draft, if you know already that you want to target ACE, you're going to do something like this. Draft dash your name or whatever you want dash ACE. It means that the tool there will know, I'm targeting this document for ACE. So whenever I'm preparing an IETF meeting in Madrid, I could quickly review all the drafts that are about this working group. All right? What do we see here? The draft just exists in the status here. If you come back and if you look at this one is in the RFC editor queue, which means that the draft have a status. There are steps, and we're going to review how you go from one to the other. If this one is the RFC editor queue, it means we're checking the last English terms and everything in there to make sure it's fine, but it's basically not going to change the content or the intent of the draft. All right, so have a look at the status. Now, you wrote your draft, right? In this case, this is this one. Or you want to review the history of this draft. What I like about in the data tracker, you will see the time. On July 23, it was version 00 of this one. Look, Tiloka. Is this a name? Is this like a specific meaning? We don't know, we don't care. The point is that it's targeting ACE. we had like 3 revisions of the draft, and after that it was adopted as a document. So if you want to provide feedback on some documents, and by the way, that's a question I get on a regular basis, I want to be involved in the IETF. How do I do that? The first thing is that you target one working group. You look at the documents and you start providing feedback. Now, maybe your feedback was already addressed. So if you want to do your homework, you just review a little bit the history of the draft. And what I do also is that I go in the main archive, search for the draft of interest, and see what had been discussed already. Now, it doesn't have to be a formal process. If you just say, I discovered this draft, this is my feedback, nobody's going to tell you, oh, you should read the entire archive first. Good feedback is good feedback. All right. Any questions on this? It's an interactive session, right? The basic standard process. I've been trying to highlight a couple of points that are going to be useful here. But I want to describe something which is in this RFC on consensus and humming in the IETF. I told you I'm probably wearing my t-shirt. What does it say? You can read it? Okay, it says that the unofficial mantra of the IETF is we reject kings, president, and voting. We believe into rough consensus and running code. The rough consensus, we're going to mention that multiple times in the process, because in the history of a draft, there are points where we check the consensus. And the running code, this is why we got the hackathon this weekend, right? So in the next meeting, I don't want to see you here in this session. I want you to see you in the hackathon coding something. Deal? Deal? Good. So let me explain humming. Let me explain voting that we don't do. So in working groups, there are always some issues and we need to find a solution. So let's make a game. Let's say we have a very important decision to make is, should we come back to Madrid for the IETF? Right. So I want a show of hands of who believe we should come back to Madrid? And who believe we should not come back to Madrid? Okay, good. 3 persons. Now, the way it works is that I just want to get a sense of the room to see what you guys are thinking. Now, the show of hands, we don't like it too much because it's not voting. It's not because we had like more people telling we come to Madrid. Okay, that's it, we come back to Madrid. Now, as a workgroup chair, I'm going to get a sense of the room and see what you're thinking. Now, the issue with the show of hands is that I'm going to target you because you said no. So I'm going to come back to you after the meeting and say, why did you say no? And you don't like it too much because whether we come back to Madrid or not is not important. Now think about, we want to have this encryption algorithm in the protocol or that one. The implications are way more important. So what we try to do is to anonymize the people giving their feedback. So typically, the hummist means, I'm going to re-ask the question. Who wants to come back to Madrid? Who doesn't want to come back to Madrid? Good. Now I know without having an influence that actually you and my team, you said no, I'm going to get you. It's the way it works. Now what we're going to do is I'm going to say, maybe amongst of those people who hum against it, there is a pretty valid reason why we don't want to come back to Madrid. Exactly like the encryption, there is maybe a pretty valid reason why we don't want to choose encryption number 2. So we're going to welcome the people telling, is there something we should know about Madrid? Feel free to come to the microphone and express your concern. And it means that even if a single person has a pretty valid reason not to come back here, maybe the consensus in the end would be, this person is right. So we don't vote. It means that this humming is somehow the start. We poll the room to see where we want to go. Then we listen to all the arguments, and in the end, we do it again, and we call a consensus. Maybe the only reason not to come back to Madrid is not the valid one. Whether it's too hot, or I don't like tapas, or whatever, right? Now, this is what we're doing with the humming. We were doing a lot of humming in the past. Now, because the internet is the internet, because of COVID, because we are more inclusive to get people don't have to be physical here. With virtual meeting, it's slightly difficult. If you say, and we're all in a conference call, you say hum, the one with the louder microphone is going to win. So it doesn't work. So what we're doing now is polling via a tool to see, oh, there are like 42 people in favor of Madrid and 3 against. But it's the same process, right? It's not voting, it's humming. If you want to read more about this, read the reference. So this one is yours? Oh, okay.
So the next stage, I'm going to talk to you a bit about all the sort of bits of the IETF process, document process, and the different phases we go through. There's quite a lot of detail and a lot of stages that will happen here. And what I'm going to try and do is just try and give you a rough feel of what goes on. And the idea here is so you get appreciation as to why it takes maybe a year or 2 years or 3 years to get an RFC published, because there's all these different phases we go through. And also just to get an idea of what things matter at different stages. What you don't need out of these next sort of half-done slides is to know exactly what happens at each different stage. The bits that are early on about bringing new work to the IETF are more important than the later ones about how the ISG does processing of them, because there'll always be people to help you along the way. But I want to sort of highlight that there's 3 broad phases of bringing new work and documents into the IETF. The first phase is, as Benoit was saying, is you bring a new document in to the IETF, and that's the individual phase. And you'll do some work and processing on that. And then eventually you'll get past that and it might move on to be adopted by a working group. And then you have a working group phase where they do more work on that document, and that might take another year and sort of get all the details and get the specification to the point where you think it's ready. And then after that, finally, at that stage, the working group thinks it's done and it moves on to the ISG. And then they have a phase of checking more broadly across the IETF that think the document's good, and finally gets published as an RFC. And then in the next few slides, I'm now going to talk about what happens in these individual phases. But I will try and go through them so you understand the details, but you don't need to remember all this. Just remember the early ones and how to bring stuff in. So as Benoit was saying and he'll talk in later on about all the different mechanisms you can bring new work to the IETF, but one of the best ones is you write a draft about your ideas. And there's tools that IETF provides to help you write those drafts. I think there's maybe a session on doing that as well, some guidance. But you write a draft, an individual draft, and you try and target to a working group by naming it with draft working group and then your name. And that helps target where it goes. And so your document comes to the IETF, it goes to you send it to the mailing list, and it's a good idea to send a mail to the mailing list at the same time saying, okay, here's my new draft, here's my idea, please can you review it and give feedback. And then after that, you might be able to present it at a meeting if there's feedback and there's interest in that document. And you'll have various stages where you get feedback and you update the document and you post new revisions. And this is all part of this individual phase. You as an author own the document. You can make whatever changes you like. It's under your control. And it will go through and you'll have multiple phases and feedback. And you get to a point where you think that actually there's good interest in this and you've got as far as you can at that stage and you want the working group to adopt this. And at that point, you ask the chairs, you say, look, I would like you to find out more formally, is the working group interested in adopting this work to progress it forward? And the chairs will look at what the feedback's been, they'll look at the discussion, and they'll decide whether to do an adoption poll. And they will ask the working group effectively, is like, do you want to adopt this work? And not only just like it's not a vote, again, it's the same sort of rough consensus process of asking, is there interest in this work? Does the working group think it's a feasible problem? Do they think it's a tractable problem to solve? Are there people who are going to help with this and progress this work? Is it one person's idea, or is it something that the IETF thinks, or that working group thinks more broadly we should be working on? So they'll ask for people to support or object to adopting the document. And if they object, they'll ask them to explain why they think the working group shouldn't work on this. And you'll have that sort of adoption process, and then the working group chairs will decide whether or not they think there's consensus within the working group to more formally adopt that document and progress it within the working group. It is possible that a document may fail an adoption call. That doesn't mean it has to be the end. It might be that at that stage, the working group doesn't think it's quite ready yet. Maybe it needs some further details to be changed, or maybe the approach, they don't think it's quite right. And it will stay as an individual draft, and they might do some more revisions and then have another adoption poll in another 6 months or a year's time or something. So this can take time. But it's key when you're doing this is to try and build consensus with other people, work with other people to try and progress your work here. So that's the sort of phase, the first phase in terms of getting your work adopted into the working group. Once it's been adopted, then you have the same thing where the working group will now progress the work, and nominally the work, once it's been adopted, is no longer owned by you as the author. It's also owned by the working group. So the document is under IETF's change control. The working group's allowed to say, I don't want you to edit this document anymore. I want to assign a different editor to edit this document. That's unusual, but there might be reasons to do it. But it's ultimately that document at that stage, once it becomes a working document, is under change control of the working group. You're obliged, if you stay as the author, as the editor, the normal thing is to reflect the consensus of the working group. So if you decide actually for your particular protocol, you want to use the number 10 here, and the working group collectively discusses this issue and says, no, you should be using 20 instead, despite the fact that it goes against your own judgment as the author, you have to change the document to reflect the working group consensus. And this process goes on, and you have more, you'll present it in meetings, and being a working group document, it'll be guaranteed time on the agenda, it's sort of prioritized. And you'll take feedback on, and you'll keep having this stage of updating the document, working through the issues as people review it and comment on it. As authors, you'll help progress the document. So in this phase, the document sort of matures and gets sort of more complete in terms of its what it's describing, and make sure it covers all the issues. So that phase could take, I don't know, it might be very quick for some documents, it might be 4 months, but it might be 2 years or 3 years or 4 years. Just depends on how quickly you as an author or whoever's driving the document push it forward. It depends how quickly the working group helps do the reviews and progress it. It depends how complicated the document is and how many issues there are, and it depends how urgent it is. So all these things can change over time. But you'll get to a phase where effectively you, the author or the editor of the document, thinks it's done. You've listened to all the feedback. You've taken everything on board. You think you've got the document as good as you can get it to. And at that point, then the working group chairs, as the authors, you go back to the working group chairs and say, look, I think we're done. We've taken all the feedback on, there's nothing more to do. And at this stage, the working group chairs will either agree with you and say, yes, we think that those issues are resolved, or they might say, what about these things? But generally then you do a working group last call. So this is a second sort of more formal step in the process to actually check if there is still consensus in the working group to say this document is done and we think it's good enough to publish. We think it's ready to go. And again, it's like all things in the IETF, it's not a voting thing, it's a consensus thing. They will ask the working group, they'll send an email out and say, please review this final copy of this document. This is your last chance as a working group to comment on this document, provide all your feedback, and give an indication as to whether you think this document is ready to be published. And some people say, no, I don't think this should be published. Or some people might, and normally if they say, I don't think it should be published, they should indicate why. They're going to say, well, you've chosen not to put any security in this protocol, and it's going to be deployed in an environment where security is a must. So we don't think you can publish this document unless you address this requirement for security, for example. So we have this working group last call phase, this discussion that happens. It might have 2 working group last calls or 3 working group last calls, depending on the level of feedback and how that feedback's addressed. But the working group chairs have got to make sure that there is consensus within, or rough consensus, to publish that document. It doesn't mean that every single comment from everyone has to have been changed. It doesn't mean that anyone in the document can stop it being published. It does mean that you have to have considered everyone's opinions and comments and either said, yes, this is valid to move forward, or we can effectively decide that that comment's not valid from working group consensus. So that's the sort of the core phase of an individual adoption, and then you go through this working group phase. And towards this end of this, you may find that the chairs ask for other areas to review the document via the directorate reviews. Those often happen later, but if it's got security considerations, you might ask the security experts can you review this document now and give us some feedback as to whether you think we've successfully addressed the security concerns in this document? And they'll get a review and get back to you, and then you can address those concerns. Once the working group last call is done, then and it completes, if the working group chairs decide there is consensus to publish, then they'll then sort of hand the document off to the ISG. Before that they do that, the last phase of it is you have a shepherd to help it through the remaining part of the process. And often the shepherd will do 2 things. They'll do another last review of the document, finding some nits and things, but they'll also check have you filled in all the sections? Have you missed anything? Have you got all the different areas of the document correct? And they have a checklist that they go through. So you get a shepherd's write-up. And for people who are not brand new in the IETF, but if you decide to keep coming and you've been here for a few years and you've been writing documents and things, one thing that sometimes you get is the chairs asking, could you do a shepherd review? And if you think that you want to progress within the IETF to get more experience of the process, that's a great thing to do. And they will help you. The chairs will happily help you shepherd a document through. And you do a review and you do the checklist. And then you are on all the emails as the document progresses through the next stages of the cycle. So it's a good way of learning the remaining part of this.
We have a couple people in the queue.
Oh, yes. Come on. Please ask questions. I think we're okay on time. Yes, we're fine.
Hello, Hanna Kritam. I have a question on the, are there any time limits for the different steps or stages in the process? For example, the last call, let's say, is this time or something.
So yeah, actually there is, yes. So normally for a last call, there's like a 2-week time limit for people to provide feedback within the working group. It is not super strict though. So most chairs, if there's lots of discussion happening, then the working group last call will go on longer. But effectively, you're giving the authors a 2-week period where anyone who's going to provide feedback, that's their opportunity to do it. And it's still the case that even as the document progresses through somewhat these later phases, if somebody suddenly finds an issue, it's like, oh, actually, this aspect of the document is broken or the protocol is broken, needs to be fixed, then we won't ignore that and say, oh, you're too late. That will normally get taken into account. And maybe the document will move back in the process to do that. So, but overall, for the various phases of the document in terms of like an individual draft or the working group phases, no, there's no time limit. It takes as long as it takes to get the document to a level of standard and review and things ready to publish. So it's about getting the right thing to be published at the end.
There's two more in the queue.
Okay.
Thank you for the 2 presentations. Quite clear to me, but there is one word that I would like you to be a little bit more explicit. For me and the audience is the consensus, which is by the way, a very hot topic in distributed systems. And we solve it often by majority and by voting, but there is no vote here. Does it mean that if no consensus, there is like finally something like a renegade in the group that should be managed? That's what I would like to understand now. Thank you.
So your question is a bit more about how consensus works and what happens if people are opposing that consensus. So I don't think it's renegades in the group. So everyone who comes to the IETF should be acting on their own part to try and make the internet and the internet protocols as well work as well as they can and be as good as they can. So everyone here is coming in an altruistic way to try and make the internet better. Of course, people will represent their company's views as well, but the obligation here is we're all individuals. So it's perfectly valid within a working group or any of these reviews to say, I disagree, this shouldn't be published for these reasons. That's not a bad thing to say. We will all say that at various times. Normally, you try and do it in a constructive way and say, I think that these things should be changed to make the document better and happy. But in some cases, you may get to the stage where you say, actually, there's nothing that can change with this document to the point where I'll be happy with it. It doesn't mean it won't be published, because you don't have to get absolute consensus among everyone there. You have to get rough consensus. You have to get the feeling that within the broad community is does it feel like the community agrees on a whole that this should be published, and any things that are any issues that people are raising have been addressed or mitigated. So no, you can't block work normally, but you can end up slowing it down and things. So I find within the IETF process, it's best to try and take a collaborative view and try and understand people's points and try and see if you can address them, talk to them offline, try and see what's the thing that they're disagreeing with. Can you find some sort of agreement with this? And that often works, not always, but it often works.
Okay, thank you.
And the last thing to say is Benoit shared a reference to the consensus. There's a good document. I can't remember the RC number. Do you know?
72, 82, it seems. Check. I have it, no problem. I have it. So thank you. So I will keep in mind from your history of consensus text and what you said that IETF has a so wonderful team workforce. So thank you, and God bless us for all the sacrifice for a better internet. So best to all. Merci.
Next we have in the queue is it Mikey? Mikey? Yep.
So Mike Nordin. My question is, what happens to most internet drafts at dispatch? Is it possible to direct it to an existing working group, or is the usual thing that happens that a new working group is created? Because the current working group seems quite specific.
I'll only answer that one very quickly because we've got some slides later that cover exactly that process of bringing new work into the IETF. But in the dispatch process, I can't remember the exact choices, but the one choice is, yes, you dispatch it to an existing working group. The second choice might be you need to create a new working group that might require the area director to do that. Or there's another process called the BOF process, birds of a feather process, for checking if the IETF as a whole wants to work on it. You might decide within that work group not to work on that item. You might say this is not the right work for the IETF. So those are the sort of three main choices. There's a couple others.
Next we have in the queue, Shay.
I'm not sure. I'm Ben. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah. So, say if I already have an ID document, where should I submit to? Who should I contact, and where should I submit the document for review?
So it depends on what area so if you look at the areas and you look at the working groups, it's worth trying to work out within the IETF where you think that work fits. and then you try and target normally one of those dispatch groups or maybe one of the area working groups to say, look, is this work to be brought in? Where should I take it? Talking to the chairs can help and things like that. But again, Benoit talks a bit later on more details on how to bring new work into the IETF. So one quick comment is with the queue system, hopefully the ideal way is if you're on the app or your laptop is to log in to the queue to raise a question. It's perfectly fine to ask it here, but normally most of the working groups, they'll manage the queue through the app. So you need to add yourself into the queue.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Shay?
Hello, I'm Shay. I had a question on the relationship between the mailing list and the in-person meeting working groups. Particularly like I know that decisions get made on the mailing list, but if you could clarify a little bit about.
That's an excellent question. So yes, so lots of decisions do get made within the in-person meetings and in interim meetings as well. That I can't remember, we mentioned those later as well. So lots of decisions get made there, but not everyone can always come to these meetings. Not everyone can always come to the interim meetings. And the IETF wants to check that everyone's views can be heard and everyone's views are taken into account. So that's why it's generally the standard process to confirm decisions that you make in the room, in a meeting, on the list, so that anyone who isn't there has a chance to express their views as well, and that you're collectively getting a good opinion across everyone who's participating within the IETF. So in terms of our process, I think I've covered the individual stage, I've covered the working group stage. Did I get to the point where, yes, I think we did. So at the end of the working group stage, you will, the working group chairs will submit the document to the area director and say to the area director for that working group, because every working group has an area director assigned to say, we're done, we're ready for this to be published. The area director will then do their own review of the document, and they will then choose whether they think the document is ready to be sent on for wider IETF review and into the ISG process. Now, it is possible that an area director has the right to say, I don't think we should publish this document. Even though the working group's been working on it, I don't support publishing it. That's very unusual to happen for a working group of adopted documents. Normally, if that was the case, then the area director should have spoken to the working group first. So they do their review normally, and they say, we need to make these further changes, another review process. The authors will work with them to make those updates. And then finally, the area director says, I'm happy. I'm ready to put my name against this document and say, yes, I think as the area director, this should be published. And at that stage, it gets sent out for IETF-wide review. And so this is the stage where not just the people within the working group get an opportunity to comment on it, but you're checking that everyone else who's part of the IETF community can review that document and provide comments. And that's normally a 2-week period where a document goes out for that IETF-wide review. Occasionally, for some things, it's not gone through a working group. You'll have a 4-week IETF last call period. But for most things, it's 2 weeks last called. And at the same time, you'll often get a lot more directorate reviews from the different areas to review the document from like an ops perspective or security perspective or a DNS perspective to check these things depending if the document touches those areas. And those reviews are both to improve the quality of the document and also to help the area directors when they come to ballot on the document. And the key thing here, when you are progressing your documents through the process, is to try and remember that all these people, like the directorate reviews and the area directors when they review document later, they're all trying to help you improve your document and make it better. So sometimes it can feel like, oh, I've got another load of reviews and comments and things, but these are normally people with fresh eyes who are looking at the document from a new perspective, and they're saying, look, here I've reviewed this document and I either have these extra expertise or I have this extra experience, and I'm trying to help you make your document as clear and as good as it can possibly be to the wider community who's going to consume this document, because it is much better to get the bugs and nits and unclear language out early on before a document's published than have to come back and republish it and put it through this whole process again. So once it's gone to IETF last call review, then another consensus check is done by the area director. So he will look at the comments that come back on the IETF last call. And just like the working group chairs have checked consensus to publish by the working group, the area director is checking that there's consensus to publish amongst the wider IETF community. And nearly always there'll be some comments to address, but they'll say, yes, okay, there's consensus to publish. Occasionally, very occasionally, if it's contentious, there might not be, and it won't go any further. Or there might be major changes to be made to the document, but by and large, it goes further. And then the sort of last, or one of the main last phases of this is the ISG processing. So here, within the ISG, the 14 ADs, area directors, all get a chance to review the document and provide comments on it. So they will all review the document and decide whether they are happy for the document to be published. And they'll ballot on that document and they'll provide comments to you effectively. I'll talk a bit more detail about that a bit later on. So they do a phase of review, and you have to have, the ISG has to be happy to publish the documents, and then it's finally done from like a processing perspective. From that point onwards, once the ISG is reviewed and their comments have been addressed, it now sits in a queue for a little while the RFC editor waits to process it. And then you get into that final phase where the RFC editor will effectively do any finer nits and minor changes, but they won't change the semantics of the protocol, the specification. They're just improving it for its readability. And then finally it gets published as an RFC. I'm going to hand off to Benoit here just to give his own quick summary of the process.
All right, summary. You arrived at the IETF to hopefully write an IETF draft. This is this slide. I want to stress that it's not the goal of everybody to arrive here and write an IETF draft. You can just be helping the community by reviewing documents, by writing code in the hackathon, etc. Now, let's assume that you want to go with a document. Let's put everything we heard into one slide. You are individuals here. You're going to write an individual draft. Your ID here. You write the draft. Writing the draft is half of the work because PowerPoint slides, they don't work, right? Just bullet points, the way you express it, people understand differently. Writing it has got some value. You now have a working group document. We had a question on not too sure where to go. Well, you look at the different working group, which one is interesting for my ID. If you know, you put the name, right? If you recall the acronym in the draft name. Then you've got a couple of iterations. Ideally, we're going to discuss how to get feedback, and it's finally adopted. Oops, sorry. It's finally adopted. First consensus call for adoption. It belongs now to the working group. We do the last call. Second consensus call, right? Do we agree it's good to go? It becomes to the area director review. If there are some issues, it goes back to the working group. Third consensus call here. The IETF last call. So you had, for example, a routing document. In the IETF, they say, well, you're not even thinking about security and how you're going to manage this. That's an issue. Go back and work on this. Done by the full community. Then ISG review. If there are some issues, go back to the working group. Otherwise, it's published. So what's my point here? We've got 3 consensus calls, right? Based on your question, we're going to listen to all the issues. It's important to have every talking because every single individual comes from a different point of view. It doesn't mean that we have to address all the issue. At some point in time, we need to draw a consensus. To take the extreme case that I witnessed is there were 2 algorithms and the protocol has to select one or the other. We had a camp defending that one, a camp defending this one. Now, what do? If we all camp on our position, we don't make progress. The way to do this is that the chairs ask, do we all agree that we want to have a single algorithm for the internet? Everybody agreed, right? In this extreme case, sorry? Okay. In that extreme case, they said, okay, we flip a coin because it's more important to get one solution. Okay, good. The second thing I want to mention here is that this process takes time, but it also means it's efficient. We could just do an open source library and everybody's using that one, but if there's a flow in there, we don't see it. So, okay, that's a summary. Good. Now, I mentioned that we validate all decisions on the mailing list, but it means that some working group might be working differently. Some might be using GitHub. And somehow GitHub is very efficient. If you just want to update one part of the text, you do a PR, and if the people like it, they accept it. Right? If the working group like it, they accept it. They validated the next revision on the mailing list. This is fine. Some working group might have interim meetings with a specific focus. This interim is dedicated on how we're going to do data modeling in the green environment. We could have as many as we want. The only condition is that there is a 2 weeks notice to get people prepared. We could have also a working group where there are like 3 chairs, or a working group where there are a secretary. The secretary will be helping with all the administration, making sure that the presentation are there, that the meeting is well organized, and all this. It's also a way to help the community. So Rob mentioned that whenever it becomes a working group document, the document belongs to the working group. There is also the possibility where the chairs are going to decide you will be the editor of that document, okay? In most, if there are no potential issues, we keep the draft authors. And the last one is the design team. So for example, there is a design team in one of the working groups I'm in where we ask them, we want to investigate if there is something to be done in the IETF about knowledge graph. This is your task. You come back on a regular basis to the working group and express your observation. So different ways of working. The constant in there is that everything is done on the mailing list. At least the decision there are validated on the mailing list. And this is how you look for the meetings, right, in a tracker. Here, it's a list of interim meetings for a specific working group. Oh, sorry, for a series of working groups. So, for example, for this working group, we had a meeting on that day. And what I like is that for a tracker, you could directly click on all of these icons there that's going to give me a tar file with all the draft. This is how you connect directly to the meeting. This is where there is like the notes. And we take notes on the fly in meetings. They're accessible to everybody. So for example, let's say that you went to the microphone and people could not, understand what you want to say. You might go in the meeting minutes. You're not going to change what you said, but you're going to say, this is what I meant, because maybe it was not captured the right way. So all the meeting resources are there on the right. This one is you again.
I've been told I need to speed up a bit. So, so I want to talk a little bit about the IESG, but not too much details because it doesn't really matter. It's not important. So at the end of the day, when the document gets through the end of the process, you get this stage where the area directors will all ballot on the document. And if you're less experienced in the IETF, this can be quite an intimidating stage because the area directors are very senior people in the IETF, and you get these comments late in the process. And there's 2 types of feedback that often come through. One is like a discuss comment, and one is a comment ballot position. And a discuss ballot position is effectively a blocking position. It says you have to address these comments by the area director before the document can go forward. Whereas a comment ballot position says, here's some comments to take into account in your document, but it's basically up to you whether you decide to address these or not. It's just the area director trying to say and trying to make your document better. The key thing to be aware of here is lots of documents, probably even the majority of them might end up with 1 or 2 discuss ballots, where an area it says there's something that must be changed, this document to be published. But don't be scared of them. They're not trying to stop your work. They're just trying to help you address like an issue that they think is critical enough that has to be changed. So, so be aware of this different balloting processes goes through, but don't be scared of it. They're only there to try and help you progress the documents. It's worth saying that the ISG and the members on the ISG are reachable, and you can go and talk to them and find them when they are. But during the meetings, they're really, really busy. They have lots of things to coordinate. Often they will have, they call like area hours. I don't know how many scheduled this time where you can go and talk to them. It's a good opportunity. Or if you see them in like the new new participants drinks and things, they're there to talk to you. They're there to welcome new people into the IETF. I've not mentioned the telechat, but I'm going to skip over that for today. In terms of the documents, another thing that's that's hard to see sometimes, but it's sort of important but not too important, is the classification of the document. Most of the RFCs that go through the IETF get published as either a standards track document, proposed standard, or an informational document. And those are the 2 categories, key categories here. Most of the documents you see in terms of the standards track end up being proposed standard. Occasionally they get published, they get upgraded to a full internet standard, but normally by the stage that they are so well known, it doesn't really make too much difference. So the key ones you want to know is most people regard a proposed standard as being done from a standards point of view. And these ones are documents, the proposed standards that have protocol considerations and implementations, as in there's a lot more strictness in terms of the language and how the IETF sort of publish these documents. The other category that you often see is informational documents that might be some comments on how to deploy this, or sometimes like the architecture documents might be informational. They're not specifying how the protocol is going to work, they're providing extra information. And you'll see at various times that sometimes people get a bit stuck in whether something's proposed standard or informational, but it doesn't really matter too much. It's still just a document. The last one is experimental, or as I mentioned BCP as well. The last one that really matters for your documents is experimental, which is like a protocol that is, as it says, an experiment. Those are quite rare, and normally an experiment will be time limited for a period of time. So I'm going to try a new protocol on the internet. I want to see how it works. I'm going to move questions to the end, considering time. BCPs, you'll come across these. These are type of document that's used to, there's 2 cases. One of them is used within the IETF to define the IETF process, best current practice. So for example, the procedure of how you produce a standard is both an RFC and a best current practice, a BCP. And then the other sort of BCPs you see, best current practice, is guidance to the community on how to deploy protocols. You should be using this version of TLS. The IETF says everyone should be using version TLS 1.2 or later, and that becomes a best current practice. That's the guidance to the wider community, internet community, of this is what you should do. And I'm back to you, Benoit.
All right, so you heard a lot about the process, and a couple of you have been writing an IETF draft, or you're not there yet into working with adoption, last call, and on this. Maybe the most important question for you, if you're in this room, is how do you bring new work to the IETF? So the first question you have to ask yourself is, the ID you're bringing here, is this something that the IETF should be working on? Right, and it's not always yes. So for example, if you want to standardize the transmission hardware, it's not the right place. So ask yourself, is the IETF the right place? Ask yourself, who's going to use it and how? You will not succeed alone in the IETF, which means that you need to bring the people with you. You have to think, oh, I'm addressing this community, so let me make sure that I have already maybe some support or some interest over there, right? So it's about also interoperability, right? So that's something that we want to keep in mind. Now the thing is this research or not? right? So we heard a lot about AI these days. Yes, we should be doing AI, but is this more research, or if there is something interoperable that we want to standardize in the IETF? If it's more research, this is maybe the IRTF. If it's a data model, a protocol, something, this might be the IETF, right? So that's also something that you have to consider. Then I mentioned before, write down the ID. Just structuring the ID into text takes some time. If you're able to explain it correctly, great. On top of that, you want to have like the 2-minute elevator pitch. I'm working on this ID, which is about TSV, and I want to have a new congestion control, which is going to solve this issue. What I witnessed in the IETF is that whenever you bring different committees together, the terms they use mean something different. It means something different if you're a vendor, if you're an operator, if you're someone else, a software developer. So just agreeing on what you speak about is important. The IPR, intellectual property rights. So it's perfectly fine to have a patent on something. The IETF is not in the business to evaluate if your patent is applicable, if your patent is right or wrong. We don't deal with that. The only thing is that if there is a patent on your work, you must disclose it. Part of the working group adoption call, you will be asked if you have a patent or if you know of a patent from someone else. This is your duty to declare it. Because if the working group says, okay, we want to accept this work, and later on we discover there's a patent, right? This is an issue. And the last point there is you want to decide what the best outcome is. What do you want to do? You start writing a draft, but what is the end goal? So if you go and present the working group, that's a question you might be asked. What do you want to do? Have an implementation, have a standard, just go to the hackathon, whatever. So if you don't know where to go, like we had a question, feel free to ask around you. Typically, there is the quick connections tonight. If you're not sure, ask question around, and you will see that people are most of the time gentle and will be helping you, right? If you don't know, the next step, if you go to one of the dispatch working group, but again, you want to send an email or read the mailing list because maybe you will get feedback even before presenting. There is, like, whenever it's a complete new work, right? The possibility to have a bird of a feather, which means that there's a non-working group meeting where the committee is going to evaluate, is there a problem to be solved? Should this be solved by the IETF? Do we have interest for the community to solve a problem? And is there a good chance of success? And if we fulfill those criteria, we might be having a new working group. So this is what I mentioned, write your draft, short, accessible presentation, the 2-minute elevator pitch, talk about your ID with people. Remember, you will not succeed alone. One time I came in one draft, it was a pretty full draft with all the solutions. I didn't bring the people with me and they kind of pushed back and we went on a different solution. You can also present the RFC, which is like today, I think, where we've got a few minutes to present your wild ID. And respond positively to feedback. This is maybe the most important thing, but you come here for your draft. Don't forget the people around you come there for their draft. So it should be a win-win in both directions. At this point in time, we want to welcome any questions, and we know there are some people in the queue.
And we're actually going to close the queue for everybody who's in there right now. We'll take your question. We'll try to get through them quickly. And then we're going to go immediately into the next session so that we can break for lunch on time so that we can all get some energy. So first in the queue, we have Nick.
Hi, Nick with Infoblocks, but representing myself. pretend that there's an experimental draft that somebody else has submitted that's could be IRTF or something else. But if I want to provide feedback to them, the best possible pathway, if it hasn't been adopted by a working group, is probably emailing them directly. How does that eventually get brought back to the archive and to the working groups?
So there are two possible ways. Either this draft is already discussed somewhere else, and what I would do is approach the author and say, I would like to provide feedback, not only for you, for the community. Is it discussed somewhere? If it is, you go to that mailing list, it's in the archive. If it's not discussed anywhere yet, you contact directly the author and you provide feedback.
Okay, thank you.
Just going to suggest we'll take 2 more questions now. We'll be around later to chat as well.
Hello, Christian, speaking for myself. So when I wrote my draft, I was forced to choose a path for my document. And that was an informational draft, but is it possible to switch the draft later on?
Yes.
Thank you.
And sometimes you will be advised to do so, telling you present this working group, but actually it's not the best. Go away. Oh no, go in a different working group.
Next we have Fofana.
Hello, my name is Vazmana Fofana. I'm network and system engineer in French laboratory. I have so many questions, but I will try to be as short as possible. What are the criteria to be considered as RFC authors?
The criteria to be chosen as authors, so anyone can author a document, a draft. Often those same people who author the initial draft will carry on as being authors as the document goes through. If you, the IETF is a collaborative process, so often you try and get other people to collaborate with your work. And one way for them to get recognition is to also add them as authors onto the document, up to a limit of 5 people. So if you bring a document in, it's got 5 authors on, it sort of says, well, there's not more people to join. It's good if there's like 1 or 2 people and you try and find people from other organizations, other companies, to show that there's sort of a wider view of interest in this work. That helps.
Okay. And my second question is there a bridge between IETF and ERTF?
Between the IETF and the IRTF, yes. So the organizations obviously meet at the same time. There's communication between the two, between the IRTF chair and the IETF. People go to both sorts of sessions and things. In terms of how the documents are published and the rules, they're slightly different between the two.
If I can add, coming back to the previous question, like a change of course for a document, it's typical that you will come back to working with the IETF and say, it's a little bit researchy. So you should present this, not in the operational IETF, but NMRG, Network Management Research Group. It's more appropriate.
Okay, thank you.
And so I was going to suggest the last 2 questions are on the queue. If you can find me either after lunchtime or in the new participants meet and greet, I'll be there later. So I think because then we got time to move on to the next session.
Or in a bar later.
But thank you very much.
Thank you.
Sorry, I actually didn't have a question. I had a comment that I think is useful for the whole group, was that these slides finished at RFC published. That's not the end. After that, errata will be found. If there are errors in your document, errata will be published in Data Tracker, and you may need to come back and revise the document. But also, the IETF is not the internet police. We don't enforce that people do what we publish. So you need to persuade the world that your idea is good and to use your RFC. Just because it's published as an RFC doesn't give it any power in the world. So you still need to get the rest of the world to adopt your idea. It's not the end just when it's published.
So our next session is, it's really short. It's an introduction to the hackathon, which is happening right now in a couple different other rooms. It happens from Saturday to Sunday. And so we have Charles here who's going to give you that brief introduction. And then we're going to go live to the hackathon room via video. And then we're going to break for lunch and actually physically walk over there to have lunch for those of you that did sign up. So with that, here's Charles.
Great. Well, hello, everyone. Happy to be here and have the opportunity to talk with you about something near and dear to my heart, the hackathon. So, okay, so you already heard a little bit about me. I'm Charles. My two other co-chairs, who you'll meet shortly, Benno and Barry, they're both over in the hackathon room now, and we'll be switching over to them shortly. The note, well, you guys probably covered earlier. Okay, so running code. You've probably heard that. You know, the IETF's all about rough consensus and running code, and running code has been and continues to be a very important part of what we do in the IETF. Most of what I think you heard in the previous session was focused more on drafts, internet drafts, progressing them, hopefully becoming RFCs. In parallel, though, we really want to be thinking about running code that's implementing what you're specifying in the draft. In earlier days, I think a lot of the working groups actually required that you had multiple independent implementations of something for it to progress from a draft to an RFC. That still is true in some working groups, but it's not a requirement across the broader IETF. But the running code is still very important. And one of the reasons we created the hackathon and brought it into the IETF was to make sure we're putting an appropriate amount of time and emphasis on running code and providing an environment for that to happen. So the hackathon, it's a very important part of the IETF. It starts on the weekend. It started yesterday, continues on into today. It's really focused on developing any kind of code associated with work in the IETF. It might be that there's an RFC and you're doing an implementation of it. It could be that it's an internet draft and you're just testing out some small piece of it. It could be you're writing a utility that helps you snoop some internet traffic to look for what's going on with a certain protocol to see if it's performing the way you expect. Anything like that is open and available. We really encourage open source because it's easier most of the time for people from multiple companies to work on it collaboratively, much like they work on drafts together. But you know, proprietary implementations are okay too. Really, the whole goal is to speed up the work in IETF and improve the quality. Because if while you're specifying the draft, you also have people implementing it, you're able to verify if what's specified is actually something that can be implemented. Is it clear enough, or is there ambiguities? Does it actually not work, or are you missing something? So if you're writing code and testing it out at the same time that you're specifying it, the two things can really help each other to progress things faster and with much better quality. The other really important thing is to bring new people into the IETF, people who maybe don't really think of themselves as standards people, but they're software developers, they're system integrators, they're from a test organization. All of those people can really contribute valuably to the IETF, and the hackathon is one way we help foster that and bring new people, young people, you know, to participate in the IETF. So one thing I want to make sure is clear, because when people hear hackathon, they sometimes think like, oh, big competition with prizes and very competitive. That's not what this is. It's actually very collaborative, as you'll see when we pan over to the hackathon or when you hopefully join one. Really, the whole idea is that there's a lot of different teams there, but they're working with each other. Some people work in more than just one team. It's all very collaborative and in the spirit of moving IETF work forward. We typically have a large number of people. I think we have probably close to 400 people this time at the hackathon, and a wide variety of projects that really spans pretty much everything IETF is doing. We have 60 projects this time, which is a new record for us. And so no matter what area of IETF you're interested in, there's probably a project for that. And you're welcome to bring your own project into the hackathon, much like you're able to contribute your own draft. So everything's open. It's free for you to attend, and it's open to everyone. Ideally, you will also attend the IETF meeting, because that's how we take a lot of what we learn in the hackathon and bring it into the working group sessions. But even if you're only able to participate in the hackathon, that's okay too. And then we have a wiki where we put all the information. So you can take a look at that even at this meeting. You can see all the projects that are there. You can see which ones kind of resonate with your interest. And in addition to doing some short presentations this afternoon on all those projects, we have what's called Hack Demo Happy Hour. And that will happen tomorrow afternoon or early evening, I believe. Do I have a slide on that? You're welcome to join that. That's where you can actually have more in-depth conversations with people about their projects. The presentations that happen today are all like 2 to 3 minutes, but at the Hack Demo Happy Hour, there'll be a lot of the projects represented, and you can go and have a more in-depth conversation with them to learn what they did, what they learned, maybe what they plan to bring back into the IETF and the working group session, what they have planned for the next IETF meeting. So that's a really good opportunity too, if you want to get a little bit better feel for the hackathon. Yeah, this is just the wiki where all the information is. I encourage you to take a look at that. And with that, I think our next thing is to give you an idea of what's actually happening there. So the plan is to switch live to my co-chairs, Benno and Barry, and they can show you what's happening there.
We can see you, Benno. Oh,
we could see you, Benno.
Spoke too soon. We've only tried this once before, so running code experiment. Wait and see if he joins.
This again. Can you hear me?
The hackathon is also a good test for the IETF network, because it's the first thing that really happens and puts a real big load on the network. You can imagine with 60 projects there across various IETF technologies. Oh, I'll let them go.
Hi there.
We can hear you.
I can't hear you, unfortunately. I expect you hear me.
They're showing you a board that's in the room that helps you locate what project is at each table. You can imagine if there's 60 projects, it's a little hard to navigate. That's what those boards are for. I can hear you, Benno. Maybe you can put in the chat that we can hear him.
He's on his mic.
Oh, yeah, if you can see me, we can hear you, Benno. It's okay. Sorry, my sign language isn't very good.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
So I guess he's showing the table again that can help you
Sorry,
navigate.
yeah. Sorry, Charles, do you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah? Okay, apologies. Okay, so this is the layout of our hackathon room. All the different projects, they sign up at the tables. Here's some impression of the room. There you go. It's huge. There are about 200 plus 250 people in this room, and a good 100 people in the other room. I will walk over to one of the projects, and I will present their work. So there you go. Sorry. All right. Where is Barry? So.
Excuse me.
All right, sorry. So maybe, hi. Maybe you can tell me something about your project?
No.
Yeah?
But it's not hard.
Sorry. Something went wrong.
Yeah.
I'll give it back to you. I'll give it back to you. Sorry.
Okay, your turn. Okay. So I think he wanted to show us the green project. It's an area where they're doing some work around sustainability, a relatively new area in the IETF. There's a working group called Green. If you're interested in that area, you might want to take a look at what's happening there. They're trying to figure out how we can be more energy efficient in what we're doing with our networks, defining new metrics in that. And so within this group, they're discussing the concepts in the draft. They have some implementations where they're testing things out, kind of doing some demos, interoperability among multiple different companies. Those types of things are what they're focusing on. And I'm pretty sure they'll be presenting something at Hack Demo Happy Hour. And then really importantly, if you go to the Green Working Group session, you'll hear some of what they learned, and that they're going to then contribute those ideas back into the working group drafts to help that work progress and have better quality and some running code behind it.
So you have had a really long morning already with lots of information. So Charles, can we follow you to the hackathon space for the lunch?
Oh, sure. Yeah, and we actually have 2 rooms for the hackathon this time because it's such a big success and so many teams and people. So the room I'll be taking you to is actually the overflow room. When we first get there, there's 3 or 4 tables, I think, or some number of tables that are set up specifically reserved for all of you. So we'll go to those tables, and then you're welcome to wander over to the other room as well to see what's going on in the larger room.
So the hackathon's taking place in 2 rooms. It's called Aranjuez and El Prado, and we'll walk over there together for anybody who'd like to join for lunch. Lunch is set up in the hallway, and as Charles said, there are some tables there if you'd like to sit and eat. If you also want a little bit of quiet time, you're welcome to bring your plates back and eat in here as well. So
and lunch starts there at 12:30, so they're just kind of setting up. So your timing's going to be perfect if we get there in about 5 minutes.
And so we have lunch from 12:30 to 1:30, and at 1:30 we have 3 more sessions as part of the new participant program back in this room. So we'll see you back then. We have a question at the mic.
Jeff Lombardo. So one question onto the hackathon. I'm used to hackathon where there is some kind of contest in between the different participants onto the same topic. Do you see like people competing onto like who is the best at implementing one of the ideas?
No, I'd say for the most part, we don't really see that. In fact, what you'll see oftentimes is people on different teams maybe have different skill sets, and they might even collaborate across teams. I would say the only time you see any sort of competition is if there's sort of competing ideas within the working group, and you have 2 different candidate drafts, and they're both trying to get adopted. You might see work by people on the 2 different drafts and trying to put some code behind what they're doing. So that could be viewed as a little bit competitive, but no, the whole idea is to be collaborative, open, and work together with each other, much like we do in all the working group sessions. So yeah, it's not a competition. There's no awards, anything like that.
All right. Thank you, everyone, and follow us over to lunch. Enjoy the break. And just a reminder, the hackathons are on this floor. You don't have to go upstairs. It's just down the hallway and follow Charles.
Yeah, and if you want help getting there, I'll be making my way over there now as well.
Thanks, Charles. Benner wrote. He said sorry for the hiccup. It's very on. All right, we'll see you over there.
Andy, first time's a charm.
trying new things.